Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Cambodia Global Dialogue. Tonight, I like to focus more on the financial sector, on the banking sector, in the context of Cambodia in the ASEAN Economic Community. I think there are so many things that we need to look from the perspective of how Cambodia can benefit, or what are the challenges that Cambodia have to face in the context of our full integration into the ASEAN Economic Community. And I believe the banking sector, the financial sector is such a sector that we need to understand better, and how our businessmen, our entrepreneur, our private sector, can understand the issue, can look at as well the opportunity. And tonight I have the pleasure to have a very good friend, Stephen Higgin, and I'll give him the floor later on to refresh a bit, his background. He's been here for a long time, and I'm pretty sure we will have a good discussion today on the sector. Stephen, welcome again to the show.
Thank you, Siphana. Wonderful to be here.
Yes. Well, look, I'm going to give you a few minutes because you've been in Cambodia for a while, and I sure don't want to recite your CV. So go ahead, set the stage a bit, your background, and what you've been doing lately, and that sort of thing,
Okay, so I came to Cambodia 8.5 years ago with ANZ Banking Group. I was with ANZ for nearly 20 years all up. So I spent 4 years here running ANZ Royal. I was happy to retire here, but after 2 years...
You don't look old enough to retire.
There's a few grey hairs there. But after 2 years, just felt the need to get back in and do something. So with the former colleague, John McGinley, who looked after strategy.
Good friend of mine.
Greater Mekong region for ANZ. We set up Mekong Strategic Partners, where we've been doing advisory and investment work in financial services, in renewable energy, done a lot of advisory work there.
But all finance driven, right?
Principally finance driven. And renewable energy is an interesting one. The biggest challenge is actually on the financing side. The technology is pretty simple. To put in a solar plant, in many ways, it's a bit like a Lego set. You just plug all these panels together. The challenge is actually getting the financing right. So that's where we see an opportunity. We also do investment work. So when the Phnom Penh port recently did an IPO, we took a third of the IPO. We're now the second biggest shareholder after the government and the port. Again, we see a lot of opportunity and a lot of upside. We've got confidence in the long-term outlook of the country, but particularly the port.
So basically, your consultancy are more finance centric. In that context, you're not just advising, but you are taking also a jump into the equity side of it. That's confidence. That's confidence.
The reality is, I wouldn't have stayed in this country if I didn't have confidence in the long-term outlook for Cambodia. It's a great place to live. It's a fun and enjoyable place to live. I've got a wife and a young child here. But I also really strongly believe in the long-term outlook for Cambodia.
Great. Well, I mean, Cambodia now is part of the ASEAN Economic Community, a much awaited event, which to a lot of people, they thought that, well, ASEAN Economic Community, January 2016, magic wand, everything is transformed. But to me, it's a work in progress. And 6 months down the road, we are in the AEC. The ASEAN leader has already adopted the next 10-year vision. So I think, the boat, if I can use the metaphor, the boat is sailing down the Mekong River, right? It's past the front of the Royal Palace, it keeps going. So to me, that's how I see this integration. But in the banking and the financial sector, how do you see our banking sector, how is it to be part of this AEC?
The direct impacts initially aren't actually that significant, or even that apparent. But you're already seeing things like recently Krungsri, the Thai bank, acquired HKL. And in the process of acquiring it. And part of the rationale for that is to do with the AEC. And building these economic linkages between the countries in ASEAN, and then wanting to establish a position in Cambodia. And we're also starting to get a lot of interest from banks in other countries who were wanting to use Cambodia as essentially an entryway into ASEAN. So they're looking to acquire banks or MFIs here that allows them to move into ASEAN. And then when you think about it in the longer term, it will actually provide, I think, a great opportunity for some Cambodian banks, and particularly Accleda.
Yeah.
Accleda is one of the great Cambodian success stories. For them to really grow their business in Myanmar and Laos and other ASEAN communities where they've built a business model that is very, very successful for emerging economies.
Yes. But you mentioned some Thai bank moving in, a Korean bank moving into Cambodia. Is that a requirement that to break into the ASEAN market, they have to be implanted in an ASEAN country?
It's very difficult for them to buy a bank in Thailand or Singapore or
I see.
In Cambodia, for the most part, it's a very open economy.
Yes.
One of the most open economies in Asia. This is a great entry point for them.
Okay. So ultimately, they will move to Thailand. They will expand the branch, right? That's what it is, right?
When you look long term,
Yes.
initially, countries are quite protective
Yes.
of their bank sector. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but initially, ASEAN there are still restrictions on banks moving to other countries.
Not totally a free flow, but freer.
Freer.
Yes.
But longer term, you would expect that to free up.
Yes.
And Cambodia has less to fear from that because Cambodia has always had quite an open market. If you look at most of the banks here, they're actually already foreign owned.
Yes.
But even though that Cambodia has had these foreign banks come in, there's still local players like Accleda. Still great success stories.
Yes.
The local banks, if anything, the foreign banks, if anything, have probably made Accleda stronger because they've helped improve the level of technology and competition, and fighting that, Accleda is stronger as a result.
I think, the way I see, right, ASEAN as a community in the financial sector, I see already way before we become an ASEAN economic community, that many ASEAN country banks have moved into Cambodia. Look at how many Malaysian banks are in Cambodia, right? Thai bank, I mean, everybody's there, So it's they see already the trend that it's coming.
Yeah.
So I think they're smart enough to move in, like CIMB, Maybank's been there for a long time, Hong Leong, they see something that normal non-banker don't see. But it's good. So in that sense, Cambodia have nothing to fear. We can only embrace that.
In the bank sector, I don't think there's anything to fear.
Okay.
Because banks like the ones you mentioned, Maybank, Public Bank, Bangkok Bank.
Yeah.
Some of them have been here for a long time. Some are more recent, but it hasn't really impacted banks like Accleda in terms of curtailed their growth. And below that, you've had the MFIs here. Remarkable growth.
Yes, indeed.
That these foreign banks haven't played in. And the foreign banks coming in typically play in quite a niche area, looking after the multinationals and high net worth individuals. And it still leaves a big part of the playing field to the locals.
So, from that perspective, the major commercial banks are up there, sort of like providing the larger portfolio. In the case of Cambodia, since we are still, let's face it, we're an emerging market, right? Financial inclusion matter. And you mentioned that the MFI have pretty much filled that gap. How are they doing for that matter?
The MFI sector here, it's actually a great Cambodian success story.
In what way?
The MFI sector here, it's probably the best MFI sector globally when looked at across a range of measures. So the interest rates customers pay here, MFI customers, are actually
people think it's very high and sometimes unfairly very critical that you charge high. So if you benchmark with other countries in the world, we okay or what?
Cambodia is one of the lowest in the world. In other countries, they can be up over 100%.
Wow.
Incredibly high. There's only one or two countries that, on average, have lower interest rates now than Cambodia. I think the average for the MFI sector is 25%. Now,
okay.
even in a market like Australia,
Yes.
on some loans, on credit cards, for example, you can pay more than 25%.
Not many people realize that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So the rates that customers pay are actually quite low
Okay.
on a global basis. The returns that shareholders get are actually some of the best in the world, and much better than the bank sector here. The governance is very strong
Yes.
in the sector, and they've had enormous growth.
Yes.
And now there's an opportunity for Cambodia to export that knowledge and expertise to other markets like Myanmar and Laos.
Okay. Yeah, because I see Cleda is in Laos, is in Myanmar. And you mentioned Kung Sri coming to Cambodia,
One of the
acquiring.
things that was in their thinking was taking the skill set that HKL has here and using it in Thailand, because Thailand traditionally hasn't done that micro lending very well.
Yes. So in a way, it's quite funny because for most Cambodians, including me, I felt that, well, we used to be looked upon that, well, Cambodia is a lagger behind with the part of the ASEAN 4, which is not the ASEAN Advanced 6. So we are more the net recipient of the generosity, of the advanced ASEAN. But in this case, we have something to give back.
Absolutely. And if you think about Myanmar, for example, it's the flavour of the month. Everyone's excited about Myanmar. Myanmar desperately needs much stronger financial inclusion and to really lift up the level of its financial system, including in the rural areas.
Yes.
And so last year we saw that the NBC here signed an MOU with the central bank in Myanmar. And part of that is around how can Myanmar improve its regulatory environment to try and develop its financial system at the same rate that Cambodia has. Because it is a Cambodian success story.
Yes, yes.
And on a regional and global stage, there hasn't been that many of them. And this is one. And Cambodia
as an emerging country who, grown from nothing 20 some years ago, we have received, indeed, to be fair, to be grateful, we did receive a lot of help from our development partner, our country friends, and I think the other extreme, if I can, nothing to do with financial sector, but just to give you an idea that from crisis there's also opportunity. Cambodia have more landmine per than the people, right? And because of that, the world have come to help Cambodia demine. So we train a lot of our deminer. My God, demining. What can you do with that, right? But it's interesting that because of our expertise demining for so long, now we become a net contributor to the UN peacekeeping force that Cambodia sent to other part of the world to demine. Yeah. What a story. So I think compared to the deminer, I think our sharing to our fellow Myanmar or Laotian, not so bad.
Obviously, one is born of tragedy.
Yes.
It's still, in many ways, a very profound and strong success story.
Yes.
Born of tragedy. The expertise around the MFI sector is very much homegrown. It's had a lot of external assistance over time, but it's still a Cambodian story.
Yes.
And I recall I was on a plane coming back from Thailand with the Deputy Governor, Nick Chantana, and she'd just come back from Myanmar. And actually felt quite proud that our local regulator was coming back from a discussion with her Myanmar counterparts on how to make their system better and to follow the lead that Cambodia is.
Well, when we said about financial inclusion, to me, in my mind, what is striking first is the woman. Woman entrepreneur, woman who is micro entrepreneur, they starting their life. And I think most of the time, they are the one who are the recipient of this financial inclusion thing. Do you see that happening in Cambodia?
About 80% or more of MFI clients are women.
Okay.
And 80 to 90% of MFI lending is out in the provinces.
I see.
So they tend to raise more than half of their deposits in the cities, and then they channel all the money out into the provinces.
Oh, good. I think we're going to take a short break, but when we restart, this is a good theme to stress because in Cambodia, I think the majority of this micro entrepreneur are women. So we're going to take a short break. Okay, well, welcome back to the show. Stephen, we spoke about the role of women in the micro enterprise. So you see in Cambodia that they are in fact have benefit from this so-called financial inclusion if we speak about the larger framework. In Cambodia, how widespread are they, in the countryside? Are they mostly, around the urban area like Phnom Penh, Battambang, or are they also in more remote area?
In terms of women entrepreneurs, they're everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Every time you go along to, whether it's a small stall by the roadside,
yes,
or a larger store in a larger town, generally the person who's there running it on a day-to-day basis is a woman.
A woman. To be fair to the husband, he do the lifting.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. It's not to denigrate men at all. But
yes.
Women do play a very large role in the business community here.
But, at the rate, say even at the 22-25%, you think at their level they can sustain? Or in their business, they probably can make more return
in terms of interest rate,
to be able to afford a 22% interest rate.
So for micro entrepreneurs,
their
key constraint is typically access to finance.
Okay.
It's not the rate or the price that they pay.
Okay.
So studies that have been done around the world in other emerging economies show that these micro entrepreneurs, they can generate returns of 200 to 300% on their capital.
Okay.
But they can't get the capital.
Yes.
So by getting a microfinance loan that they might be paying 25 or even 30% on,
yes,
if they can get a return of 200 or 300% on that,
all right,
then that's a great outcome.
Okay.
And people might think, wow, how do you get a 200 or 300% return on the capital?
Yes.
Remember, a lot of these guys, they might be turning over or selling their stock once every 1 or 2 weeks.
Yes.
Right? So just enough money
high
to buy
turnover.
stock.
Yeah.
They don't then just keep turning over and getting a little bit of a return on each one. Over the course of a year, they get a 200 or 300% return.
All right.
It's an issue of capital, not price.
Okay. So the complaint about the public sometimes is more, barking the wrong trees, if I can say. They're focusing, not on the right question. And so of course on the wrong question you got the wrong answer. So okay, I'm happy to hear that, and it's important we send a message, to the audience that no, at this rate it's quite healthy, and it enable access to finance. So let's move up a bit, the scale, from a micro to more mid-level entrepreneur. You were working for ANZ for quite a while. You've been in ANZ Bank in those days, are quite a leading bank in terms of working with the entrepreneur, mid-sized entrepreneur, like the Brown, for example. The Brown family is a good example. How do you see that level of entrepreneur, the level of sophistication? How do they deal with banks? Do they look at bank how do you see them?
From a banker's perspective, dealing with customers like that was wonderful because they were a lot more open-minded.
Yes.
They understood where the banks were coming from. Whereas some of the more traditional clients, I remember we had one client who owned some petrol stations.
Yes,
and every year he would do his books, but then he would burn them. It was a very old style.
You mean with the gasoline?
With the gasoline.
Okay, all right.
So it wasn't in his mindset that banks would want to see 3 or 5 years of financials and all things like that. And then you'd get other old school entrepreneurs who would have the view that here's a piece of land, but don't ask any other questions.
Yes, okay.
And as banks, we ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
So this new breed of entrepreneur coming through, that they've been educated overseas, they've travelled a lot,
Yes.
they're very open-minded. They are wonderful to deal with.
So this layer, mid-layer, would have no issue in terms of accessing to finance. I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of commercial bank, and so I'm pretty sure the supply is there, no?
The supply is there for good quality customers.
That's a good one. Good quality customer.
Can provide good information.
Okay.
So, for a lot of people out there, they just don't realise what the banks are looking for. There's a disconnect between what they think the banks need and what the banks actually want. But for these good customers, absolutely. I mean, a bank like ANZ, for example, is sitting on several $100 million of surplus liquidity, surplus money that would love to get out the door to good clients that meet its criteria. Other banks, they don't have quite as much liquidity, but the supply is there for good quality customers.
I mean, I see some similarity because I mentor a lot, as you know, the Young Entrepreneur Association, the Khmer Women Entrepreneur Association, and a few other group, right? Young. And I told them that in the context of AEC, expect that there are going to be many, ASEAN company. We used to call we have the MNC, right? Multinational Corporation. Now we have a new acronym, right? MAC, Multi-ASEAN Company. When they're coming, they are looking exactly like a banker. They're looking for a good partner. Everybody want to be partner with a good big company coming in. But on their side, they say, I want to have a good partner who can show me, the corporate compliance, who can show me their tax payment, who can show me the sort of like, the portfolio. I mean, in other words, they want assurance that they're going to have a good partner. So in a way, the fact that bank have lent to entrepreneur, they sort of helping them to get the documentation. Interesting.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, those that are able to provide all that, and going back 8 years here, so those that have been able to provide that for a long period of time, that have had that mindset, are the ones that have actually been the most successful.
Yes.
And I guess it's a chicken and egg situation, which comes first. But I think if you really understand your business well and have the documentation to help you understand it and give to banks, then you're better positioned to run that business. And most businesses, I think, can actually outcompete any other competitor coming in, whether it's from ASEAN or elsewhere. So if you look at Brown's Coffee, those guys, they can open up 2 stores next to each other and they're both full. And they do that in BKK.
Yes, you're right.
They will do better than Starbucks, better than all these others. It's a great success story. The Chitmong family that have Khmer Brewery.
Exactly.
Great success story.
Yes.
They're now expanding the brewery for a third time, just to try and meet demand.
Wow. So it's good because I want to link to the next thing I have in mind is that we have a lot of commercial bank, we have a lot of MFI, a specialized bank. Don't you think it's a little bit too much for a small country like Cambodia? Well, the reason I say that is that I'm not too pessimistic because we are in the ASEAN Economic Community, so we are not just serving the Cambodian. We're serving the Vietnamese company who come to business, Thai company who have set up a franchise here. So they're there. It's more than Cambodia. But in your view, what's your take on that?
So at the moment, we've got 36 commercial banks, plus a range of specialised banks, 40 or 50 MFIs, huge number, even though 8 MFIs account for 90% of that market. So it's a very, very large number.
Very competitive.
It is competitive. And overall, I think the economy here and the community have been well served by that. The challenge is around how do you properly supervise and regulate that many banks. And this is a challenge that the IMF talks about, the MBC talks about as well. And it's one of the reasons they recently increased minimum capital requirements.
Interesting. From commercial bank, from
Commercial banks, MFIs.
yeah,
So for those guys, commercial banks, for example, by 2018,
yeah,
they need to increase their capital levels
Yeah.
from 37.5 million to 75 million.
Okay.
That's a pretty big increase.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's at least a dozen that aren't going to make it unless they get in a new investor
Yeah.
or merge
Yeah.
or just
yeah.
liquidate.
Yes.
So hopefully that will result in a smaller number of commercial banks than what we
Yeah.
have today.
Sort of like merger, acquisition, consolidation. That's the word, right?
Consolidation.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what the NBC wants to see.
Yeah, but otherwise they doing fine, and that's why they still there. No?
A lot of these small banks actually don't make much money.
Yes, yes,
They certainly don't generate a very good return on
yes,
capital.
yes.
Not far off zero. They don't have many customers. They don't have much distribution.
Yes.
They actually don't serve a lot of purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's one of the reasons why, from a central bank perspective, if they merge or sell out to someone else, it's no problem.
It's no problem.
Because
Yeah.
they're not doing a lot at the moment.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Well, I want to touch a bit on the some of the challenge which I see in our economy now. You see, there's a big boom into the last several years in the real estate, right? You think this has a people say that, look, we are concerned that maybe in a couple of years when all these big project building are complete, we will have a surplus of condominium stock, for example. Any issue vis-a-vis bank lending?
There is a very big issue not related to bank lending.
Interesting. It's not.
We've got the picture of the skyline
right,
in the background here.
Right.
There is
So it's not with banks then?
there's a huge number of cranes on the horizon at the
Okay.
moment. There is going to be, in fact, there is already a big surplus of
Yes.
condos, and it's growing.
Yes.
And when you look at the chart
Yes.
of condos coming online, it looks just like Bangkok in the late 90s.
Yes.
Mid to late 90s. But most of these condos are being bought by Taiwanese, Chinese, Singaporeans, offshore investors.
Yes.
They're not being bought by Cambodians, and for the most part, they're not being financed by local banks.
Yes.
Or banks here in Cambodia.
Interesting.
Some, but not much.
Yes.
It's very small. So,
And bank don't finance strata title anyway until the building complete, no?
very
Yeah,
rural.
yeah.
Like
Okay.
banks like hard title.
Yes,
Banks
yes.
are
Okay.
Very conservative.
All right, all right.
So, the condo boom here, it will bust.
It will bust, yes.
Absolute certainty. I'll
Yes,
put
yes.
money on it. Because Cambodians aren't ready to really live in condos yet. Some
Yes.
do, but for the most part, they prefer the bores.
Yes, yeah. The beret is a bit of a car parking space, 3 trees, Yeah.
Correct. So, but over time, they will start to want to live in a condo.
Yeah.
They won't want to sit in traffic for an
Yes.
hour. coming
Yeah,
in
I
and
agree,
sit on
agree.
weekend. So, when you look forward 5 or 10 years,
Yes.
condos will be popular. By then, prices will have come down, but there'll be this condo stock, a housing stock
Yes.
that has been paid for by foreigners. It's very kind of them. And prices will be a lot cheaper.
Okay.
So it'll
All
be
right.
easier for Cambodians
All
to
right,
afford
all
them.
right. Okay.
So long term, I'm not quite so concerned. As the construction falls away,
Yes, yes.
that will have an impact on GDP.
Yes,
Will
yes.
have some flow-on effects.
Yes, yeah. So it's more the effect on the construction industry, the employment from the construction industry, not necessarily again from the bank lending side, right? Okay.
Correct.
So again, this is the second thing I spot is about barking the wrong trees, us looking at the wrong question and you get the wrong answer.
Yeah, there are some banks that
Yeah.
have done it.
Yeah, yeah.
Lending to
Yeah.
condo
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah, but there's prudential ratio anyway. They cannot exceed certain percentage of their portfolio anyway.
No, not on condos. So
Yeah.
or construction and property.
Yeah.
So there are some banks that have over 30% of their lending to this sector, which frankly is far too high.
Yes, yes.
But for the sector overall, it's not too bad. So some banks will feel pain.
Yes, yes.
There's no doubt about that. But from a prudential sector overall,
Yes, yeah.
it should be okay.
Yes. So the way I see now, if I can just recap a bit, the excess condominium building now should not be an issue of concern vis-a-vis the bank, operation in itself.
Not a material.
Not a material. Yes.
Banks will always be concerned about the potential flow-on effects.
Yes.
So construction comes off, that has other flow-on impacts.
Yes.
Steel importers.
Yes. Okay.
And
All right.
distributors of
Yes.
All fittings
Okay.
for the condos. Right?
Yes.
So there will be broader impacts.
Yes.
But is it going to cause enormous damage to the economy?
Okay. Okay.
Because banks have lent too much money to it?
Yes. Yes.
Unlikely.
All right. All right.
And that's
So
the big difference with Thailand.
yes.
Thailand was heavily debt fueled, where
Yes.
people locally were borrowing money from offshore,
Yes.
and then when the crisis hit,
Yes.
it did enormous damage.
Yes.
Here it's very different.
Okay, okay, good. Well, I mean, time to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to stress more on the future, projecting the future. What can we do? How can we ensure that Cambodia, being in the ASEAN Economic Community, we will have to do well, and the role of the banking and financial sector. Okay, so we'll take a short break. All right, we're back to the show. Stephen, we were just talking more about the future. 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we are fully integrated in the ASEAN Economic Community. You know, I think in the ASEAN, of course, there are three communities. We keep saying ASEAN Economic Community, but in fact, we should say the ASEAN Community, where you have the first pillar, the political security, which is more related to security, government. Then you have the middle pillar, which is the economic community. Then you have the social cultural pillar. 10 years down the road, ASEAN has 600 million plus population, well settled, well integrated. Not the European style, but where do you see Cambodia banking financial sector then? I hope it will be a free flow of capital. Now it's still freer because in different countries there's still a lot of restriction. Huh? Yeah. Where do you see us 10 years down the road?
I don't think it will be actually that different from where it is today.
I see.
Because it is already so much more open than our neighbouring economies. You will see the big MFIs will all be commercial banks.
They will migrate up.
Yeah, and they're already doing that.
Yes.
Prasak is now the second or third largest financial institution in the country.
In the country?
In the country, right.
Vis-a-vis even compared to banks?
Much bigger than ANZ, for example.
Wow.
And most people don't realise that
Wow.
it's that big. It's bigger than Kampu Bank.
Yeah.
It's a big, big company. And the other MFIs are coming up quickly as well. So they will be commercial banks. So when you look at who are the top 10 banks in the country, probably 4 of them are going to be former MFIs.
Yes.
Will be in the top 10 banks in the country.
Wow.
Maybe even 5.
Wow.
So that will be a change. I think the MFIs here will have, more of them will have operations in Myanmar. So from an ASEAN community,
all right.
that will be a positive. And potentially Laos. Laos is still very, very closed. It's a small market. The foreign banks here, they'll continue to operate.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no Singaporean banks here, which I find interesting.
Philip Bank, no? Philip Bank is, no? Philip is Singaporean, no?
Yes, there's Singaporean owned.
Yes.
But there isn't a Philip Bank in Singapore.
Okay, yeah.
But they don't do banking per se in Singapore.
Yes, yes.
So the UOBs, the OCBCs of the world aren't here.
Yeah. So
and it's curious.
It's curious. You're right.
The Thais are here. The Malaysians are here. The
Vietnam is here.
But not the Singaporeans.
Yes.
You'd think they would be an obvious candidate to be here in Cambodia.
But I think they will come because the sheer amount of Singaporean investors who are doing business in Cambodia, you know.
Yeah. It seems obvious.
It seems obvious.
8 years ago, they were often coming through looking at the market. They've never invested here. And in part, they've had their own issues where they went on a lot of overseas expansion. It didn't work for them, so they have consolidated. But I think as AEC kind of takes effect and they may look to come out again into the AEC countries.
Well, you know, from a policy perspective, I think the our regulator are doing a good job, in terms of maintaining a stability in the monetary policy there. So in the future, you foresee that the entrepreneur, again, they will migrate up to be a company. I mean, in a true sense, right? Now the entrepreneur, they may be a company, but they still operate with an entrepreneurial mindset, but 10 years, 5 years down the road, more of them will behave more as a true corporation with compliance, the need to have more money to expand their business.
Proper board structures.
Proper board structure. So do you see that there's enough liquidity in the banking sector to respond to their need for expansion?
Very likely.
Very likely, yeah.
It's hard to forecast how liquidity will go
Yes.
5 or 10 years out, but the system will keep growing.
Yes.
We think loans outstanding and deposits will be about 30 billion by
Yes.
2020.
Okay.
Yeah, up from when I got here 8 years ago, it was just over 2 billion.
Is that right?
So by 2020, it'll be about 30 billion, and it only needs to grow about 14 or 15% per annum, which isn't much.
Yes.
Compared to the previous growth rate
Yes.
to get there. So the system will be a lot bigger.
Okay.
So it should be able to accommodate
Yeah.
those entrepreneurs coming
Yes.
through.
Yes. Because, as I told you, I mentor a lot of them. And one issue is really not just access to finance to just grow, organically. Many of them have ambition that someday they would want to take a exponential, more aggressive approach because competition are coming, right? If you don't grow, you die. I mean, it's a virtuous circle, versus the vicious circle, right? Competition is coming, the big boy are coming from the region, and they have to be able to grow. And finance, corporate finance matter. Another interesting question related to that is that up to now, banks love to lend, of course, risk purpose, right? Risk. I mean, they have to handle that. They need hard title. But other country, not every time you come up with a hard title. Yeah. Do you see in the future our commercial bank will move to that business model that they will lend not just on hard title?
Absolutely. I mean, the way that banks here have operated has been very old-fashioned,
Yes.
basic, reliant on security.
Yes.
And that's starting to change, where they look more at the cash flows and the business plans
Yeah.
that a business has. And so for those entrepreneurs, banks actually provide quite a good sanity check or a sounding board.
Sanity check.
Yeah, banks will raise a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And if you can't answer them, then you probably need to go back and think about what you're doing. So to give you an example, when the Chipmong Group
Yes.
first wanted to do the brewery, they came to ANZ for help, and I heard about it. I said, no. What do these guys know about brewing beer?
Brewing, yeah.
And I threw some questions back.
Yes.
And they produced one of the best business plans I've ever seen. One of the family members was sent to Germany for nearly a year to learn how to be a brewmaster. Every objection that I raised, they had an answer for. I was like, okay, these guys really know what they're doing. We're happy to give them money. But a lot of businesses here don't go through that process and do the level of research
Yes.
these guys did. But if you want money from a bank for something, to take that big move,
Yes.
to make that big step or the big acquisition, you need to do your research, you need good planning around it. And banks are generally quite responsive to that.
Oh, so it's quite good because I think if banks eventually move to that, and of course with the help of the credit bureau, I think the credit bureau is doing a fantastic
Yes.
job in terms of giving that sort of like quality information about the borrower. I think I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased of the growth and the important role the credit bureau is playing into this growth, right? So
Yeah, the credit bureau has been a huge positive for Cambodia, particularly on the MFI sector.
Yes.
Because everyone was concerned that there was a lot of multiple lending,
Yes,
multiple loans,
indeed.
people borrowing from
Yeah.
The credit bureau has helped make sure that that doesn't happen
Yes.
unless the MFIs are really consciously aware
Yes.
of it. So it's generated a lot of efficiencies in the financial system
Yes,
overall. It's driven great confidence in the system. It has been a real positive for Cambodia. In terms of other regulatory bodies, you spoke earlier about the NBC. I think the role that they have played in financial sector development and Cambodia's development has actually been underappreciated.
Yes.
They're probably, I think, the best regulatory body in Cambodia. And they've done a fantastic job.
Good, good. Well, we're almost running out of time, and I probably would want to give you a few minutes to just sort of like, what's your message? What's your message?
My message, well, as a firm, MSP, we're fundamentally optimistic on the long-term outlook for Cambodia.
Yeah.
It's got demographics on its side, it's younger generation coming through. It's well located in ASEAN context. It's seeing a lot of foreign investment coming in, particularly in manufacturing. It has very open and sensible economic policies. The economic policies here, I think, are better than most other countries in ASEAN, so the government deserves credit for that. It needs to get past the next election, and that always creates a period of uncertainty. But as we look past 2018 to 2020, the outlook is positive.
Yes.
And we hear that from investors who come in. They're looking at the long term, and the long-term outlook for this economy is positive. And there's a lot of, and I just saw it yesterday, a lot of people focus on inequality.
Yes, yes.
And that's a reality. But a lot of these economic gains that we're seeing aren't just flowing to the top end. They're absolutely flowing to those at the lower levels.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Which is great. So if you look at the wage gains that the garment factory workers, for example, have seen in the last 2 years, they've been quite extraordinary. There's few markets in the world where workers have been able to get those sort of wage gains. Yes, they're still low, but these people are moving up at quite a rapid level, which is positive. So it's not just those at the very top that are benefiting. It is happening right across the economy.
Well, Stephen, it's such a good discussion I have with you. I understand a lot more about the financial sector. But if I can just wrap up, on more like adding what you said, my view is that the future of Cambodia will rely, heavily on the growth of our private sector. The source of growth will be, from the private sector. The dynamism will be from the entrepreneur moving up the scale to become a corporate citizen who will be paying tax. And I already mentioned that the future, our tax base will not, only be foreign company, will be many of the brown-like, entrepreneur, the chipmunk, the many other things that we don't know, but they are lurking below the water, right? But there are thousands of them. It's like a bridge, right? When they build a bridge for 2 years, you don't see. You wonder what the hell they're doing, and because they've been building, putting the pillar. Then one day when they finish, all the pillar pops up. And you see, oh my God, 20 pillars across the Mekong River. Something along that line, right? I see the same analogy to, the entrepreneur sector. Many of them now, by the thousand. And they are learning about corporate governance. Many of them now even are very thoughtful to think even about corporate social responsibility. I mean, giving back to the community, even they're not that big, they're already thinking of giving back. So I think they're on the right track. I'm encouraging them to say, become a good corporate citizen. Pay tax is your investment, and they listen. And to me, that's the future. That's the future Cambodia. And if, of course, when the bank sector is solid, when the bank sector have good amount of money, liquidity to lend to them, you put the two together, we can only but grow. And that's, to me, that's a sign of hope for this country, because we need stability. and stability, social stability, come from employment.
Yeah.
When people have job in a nice office or in a government factory or in an electronic factory, now with the many Japanese coming in, you say, I work in factory. But wait a minute, they wear dress, they wear glove, they wear glasses, nice canteen. To me, that is something that I want to see in our country. Yes, inequality exists like any country, but it takes time. It takes time. The foreign minister, his quote was like this. He said, "Give time some time." And I think this probably, on that note, I want to end our dialogue that Cambodia have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. But you got to give time some time. So thank you so much, Stephen. It's such a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.